All right, so I've hit record. So Gaurav, first of all, thanks for taking some time this weekend in the midst of COVID, may I say, to get together and share some thoughts, into how you see things in the space, and so yeah, let's jump right to it. So first of all, why don't you just give us a bit of a brief intro into your education, your background, and just a bit of that, good stuff.
All right. Well, thanks one for having me. So a little bit about myself. I went to York University, did a bachelor's in IT, and completed that. And then I jumped into the space sorry, while so like near the completion of my degree, I was looking for work experience, and I was just being pushed by a lot of people. It's like go look at startups, and I said okay. And the first thing I came across was AngelList. And on AngelList, I came across a small little company at that time known as Bitcoin Pay. And I was like, what's Bitcoin? Like, Bitcoin Pay, this sounds really random, but I'm going to reach out to them. And I reached out to a couple of the co founders, and I was just like, how can I get involved and what can I do? And then I came across Bitcoin Pay, and I pretty much never looked back. And I've just always been involved in the blockchain crypto industry since.
So that's pretty interesting, and so I heard of a few key things. So I heard the fact that you're looking around, within the tech space at different techs, and there's a lot of different things going on out there, right? And at a more practical level, technology is making things more efficient and trying to better us as human beings, right? So in a very practical sense, without diving too far into the tech itself right now, what
Yeah.
was it about this sort of technology, and if you can elaborate a bit on what it is first and foremost, and what it is about it that piqued your curiosity.
So I think just going back again to Bitcoin Pay, at that time, there was like a lot of community events that were happening, and not all of I could not understand at that time, but a lot of influential people were driving this technology, and people were so passionate about it. They were like, this is the next big thing. This is what is going to change a lot of how we transact with each other, a lot of how we live, and with our finances. Like, that was such a big thing in a digital atmosphere, and just hearing it from people on like the main stage and like describing this as like a next generational technology, and me being exposed to all these like cool people who are building this tech,
Yeah.
I was just like, this is not something I'm going to learn in school,
Yeah.
and this might be just the place for me to be part of like emerging technology. Whether you look at AI, machine learning, blockchain, and crypto was not as explored, and it was even newer, and technology that a lot of people were still exploring. For a lot of people, they describe as an experiment, but an experiment that is still going forward. A lot of people are backing it up, and just a piece of technology that we can transact with each other peer to peer in the most simplest way, and living, doing these transactions without a third party. And it's just so simple to describe, but there's a lot obviously going around the background.
Yeah.
But it's something that a lot of people were on board with, and they were like, we got to go forward with this, and we got to bring adoption, and we got to have everyone be part of this technology.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, that's incredible to hear. Especially knowing that you had so many different options and so many different ways you could have gone about the, where you want to end up, right? So that was, I guess, pre COVID, obviously, and that was post, the financial crisis. So, since you've been in the space for quite a few years, how do you think COVID is going to influence, and by COVID, I mean this pandemic, this novel pandemic that the whole world is in. Do you see this tech being able to like how do you see things playing out, right? Do you think this might help the tech itself? Do you see it, like how do you see things playing out in terms of the ecosystem and what's going on right now, right, with our current situation?
Good question. Thanks for asking that. I think personally, I think this might be the best time for adoption. I think the technology has been in play, and a lot of people thought, maybe the technology is too it's not mature enough yet. But I think at the same time, the technology will always be further developed. But at the same time, people are going to have to use it for that direction to be driven. People are going to like using Facebook and this is an example a lot of people have used, using social media in its earliest days. You didn't understand what Facebook was going to be like. You didn't understand where it was going to go. You just used it as sort of a social network within your small communities, but it kept on expanding with more people using it. And in the end, the users drove the direction of how the technology is used today. So with the pandemic situation, I think it's going to give people a lot more flexibility for using the tech, um, using it as a way to transact online, with getting options on different websites that might give it to people. It's like, hey, we're going to start accepting Bitcoin, Ethereum, and it's going to give people the flexibility to use it, and they're going to have more options to use in different areas for e-commerce in a digital way, where you don't have to use, your fiat currency with each other, but you can just do it now, do your transactions peer-to-peer online, and you get what you want, and the other person gets their payment. Boom, it's done, and it's just a seamless way of interacting.
Yeah, you know what, and that's pretty interesting because when you're talking about sharing value, finances without intermediaries, and trust, which is what I heard from the few things that you were talking about right now. You have this thing with COVID, as we're mentioning, where we might, like what I find based on experiences, when there's situations where you have fear, you need to give a bit more of your privacy for example, governments, which might have, I mean, for good intentions, to be able to, for example, in this sense, to be able to track whether you're sick or not. You might be able to have to give more of your information for them to create these ecosystems, like through Facebook, through these big behemoths, and so yeah, so that's an area where there might be overreach when it comes to your information and how much you're divulging, right? And you're right. I think that's one of the beauties with decentralized technologies and blockchain, that you can essentially in the future have control of your information by choosing who to share it with through private keys. Now, more specifically, we're in Toronto, and Toronto is seen as a pretty good place to grow. I mean, we have good workforce, educated people, stability, good healthcare, right? And so, what do you think? Aside from those things, what do you think it is that makes Toronto like a hotspot for this emerging tech?
So I think let's touch upon a couple of things. So Ethereum actually started here, and in its earliest days, Vitalik was in Toronto working on Ethereum. A bunch of people came together. The community was strong knit, and people started building a bunch of the tech around that. Right, that grew another ecosystem of its own from Ethereum. And then when you look at Toronto, just as an overall tech space, the city's doing a lot. They brought in big tech conferences like Collision, which is a world-known tech conference.
Yep.
They started pushing a lot of they're also known for AI, but at the same time, there's a lot of people within Toronto who are working on blockchain. And if you look, maybe even before the boom of 2017, there was a lot going on in Toronto, which a lot of people might not see, but it's hidden there. And I think that's like this. If you dig a little bit deeper, you'll see that there's like a lot of value in the city for this tech. And I think we need to just really showcase that to the world, that uh, we're open to have, a lot of, as you mentioned, talented tech that can build a lot of great things. And we are here to build that ecosystem in Toronto, and we want to showcase it to the world. So I think
Awesome.
that's
Yeah.
really special.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? Yeah, I mean, AI is pretty heavy here in Canada. And so when you think about the youth, right? And you think about the up and comers, right? What would you say, right? What would you say to them, in respect to, if they're looking to dive in, if they find this interesting, right? Like you talked about, AI, you talked about the, blockchain, and you talked about how strong the ecosystems are here in Canada. What would you say to them, right? Would you encourage them to come into the space? What are some words of wisdom that you would share with the up and comers, the youth coming up, in the world that want to explore and get better?
So I will try to translate based on my experience, like how I felt coming into the space. So it all started by going to a Bitcoin Bay meetup, and there's no sort of promotion towards Bitcoin Bay, but it was just the meetups in general, whether it's Bitcoin Bay or anyone that's trying to run a meetup. I think that's a big thing. Doing that whole community aspect um, will really like have this sort of like entrance where you can go in, go to a meetup, learn about the tech a little bit, talk to people who are building stuff in the space,
Yeah,
and not be intimidated by it. I know it can be intimidating because in the beginning, I met a lot of people who were all really technical and
totally.
diving deep, and they understood these concepts that might like go over people's head who are not technical. And
Yeah,
then on the other end, you could deal with people from the financial industry who have years of experience, like on Bay Street, capital markets people, investors, and they are looking to invest in tech, and you might be stuck in the middle as a young person trying to jump in. You're like, where do I see myself fit? I think the good part is that the technology has gone way further and is a lot more accepted by a lot of people. So don't let it intimidate you. Just read like the Bitcoin white paper, go watch some videos on YouTube. All that information is accessible. Go to a meetup, try to get involved in the community, be a volunteer at an event, meet some cool people who are doing like influential things, and just try to connect. I think that's just the best way. And keep on doing that, repeating that over and over again. And it should lead you to what you want to do, whether you're doing a sales role, a technical role, being an entrepreneur, or just finding yourself within the space or any tech space. I think those are really valuable things, and that can fit across anything. I think when you're trying to build yourself professionally.
yeah. I think that's awesome that you say that. Because you mentioned a few things there, and you mentioned. I guess the word encapsulating it is inclusiveness and growth, and and inclusion, and that's amazing. That's great that you're saying that. And yeah, actually talking about that. So talking about Bitcoin Bay itself and the community aspect of it, there is that block hack happening, which was postponed due to COVID. But that's another way that young up and comers could essentially tinkle and test and not just give lip service, but actually get involved, hands on, and learn. So that's awesome. That's really cool. So and in terms of so a little bit digging deeper into you yourself. So you mentioned different segments of ecosystems that can create value within this tech space, and so you more specifically, you mentioned different areas. What would you say? So if you talk about a little bit about yourself, and I know you're a bit more in the business development side and trying to grow the ecosystem. How do you, if somebody is, uh, how do you think, what do you think is needed for more growth in the ecosystem from a business aspect?
If you're looking at things from an ecosystem like point of view, I think the space needs a lot more companies to develop and tinker with different parts of the technology, like companies trying to build maybe more wallets, more blockchain protocol, uh, design building products, like different sort of products that can fit into driving the growth and adoption
Yeah.
of the world getting into this technology. Like early days of the internet, everyone was building a web page, but how many of those web pages or those internet companies were going past the .com crash, right?
Yeah.
There was a bunch, but then it kind of like, and that's what we'll see. A lot of people are building great ideas, and some of them will go forward and become the next big thing. I think we need to really keep driving that. We need to build more strong and grassroots companies in the ecosystem, and I think there's opportunity for everyone to do something great. So I would encourage anyone, whether you are a young tech professional trying to make it, or anyone who's looking for also a career shift, right? I know people are trying to make um, mid career shift and they're trying to jump into this tech as well. So they are also open to building the next great thing. We just haven't seen anything from them. And I encourage them to do it.
Fair point. Especially now. I mean, this is like a reset. I mean, essentially, there's a reset right now, and a lot of people have the opportunity to reflect. And if they want to make a change, you're right. I mean, right
Yeah.
now is a great opportunity to do that. That's awesome, Gaurav. So, and if people want to follow you or know more about you, is there any media channels or any channels or any way that you would say they can connect with you? Um, and just to kind of end this segment.
I would just direct everyone to at least the Bitcoin Bay social media channels to help us grow the ecosystem in Toronto. So um, at Bitcoin Bay on Twitter, at Bitcoin Bay on LinkedIn, um, Facebook as well. We're all Bitcoin Bay. And then if you want to reach out to me directly, just look up my name, Gaurav Sharma, uh, Bitcoin Bay on LinkedIn. And I'm also on Twitter. I kind of tweet. It's Lucky Charms, capital letters with two S's at two Y's at the end and two
All
S's
right.
at the end. But mainly just Bitcoin Bay related stuff. I point everyone to Bitcoin Bay and get involved in the community, join the ecosystem, help it grow. I think there's that opportunity for everyone to do great things.
Awesome. Well, listen, that was great. I mean, thanks for the time. It was a blast hearing, your insights, especially as you've been, involved, hands-on, at a real level for quite a few years. And yeah, I hope we can do this again in the near future.
Thank you so much for your time, Juan. I really enjoyed this.